Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, Opie recounts his marriage to Laura, their friendship with Greg, and how Greg moved in after a breakup. Suspicious of their closeness, he installed a hidden camera and discovered their affair. He confronted them, moved out, and publicly exposed the cheating. Now divorced and dating again, he's moved on, feeling vindicated and ready for a fresh start. Now let's get into the story. I 30 male got married to my wife 32 female when we were in our mid-20s. The two of us had been in similar circles, so it wasn't like the two of us didn't know about each other. It wasn't until we were out in a group setting that we got to talking. My best friend Greg was throwing a birthday party. I was one of the attendees, as was Laura, my future wife. After I was greeted by Greg, I wandered over to the snack table and grabbed a few snacks. It was there I bumped into Laura, who also had the same idea. Again, the two of us had talked before, but we never had a chance to have more than a surface-level conversation. That night at the party, we talked for a long time. I think we exclusively just spoke with one another. Sure, the two of us spoke with Greg, but once we started talking, it was like we couldn't stop. I ended up grabbing a cup of coffee with her that night. We stayed at the cafe for a while until realizing that it was pretty late. From there, the two of us began dating. It was slow going at first because we were both heavily involved in our careers, as people in their 20s were. I was working as a chef while Laura was working in the legal sector. The two of us dated for about a year before we had a mutual conversation about what our future would look like. After a long talk, we decided that we were going to get married. In about 6 months, we had a very small wedding with just family and friends. Greg was my best man because I couldn't imagine having anyone else as my best man. Greg and I had been friends since childhood. Despite all our differences, the two of us were best friends. He tended to live a rather chaotic life, so I felt like I managed to ground him. Once Laura and I were married, we got an apartment and started building a life together. The first year, we were definitely in newly-wedded bliss. During the second year, we started to get out of that and shifted didn't seem to mind him being here. The two of them were getting along quite well. At some point, I began to think it was a little too friendly one time. I even found them cuddling on the couch. They tried to pass it off like one of them just fell asleep on the other. I pretended to believe them, but I didn't buy it. I was a lot of things, but a fool wasn't one of them. So I decided to buy a nanny cam and then put that up in the living room. When they knew I wasn't going to be at home, the first chance I got I checked the footage and was floored by what I saw. Laura and Greg were engaging in a romantic relationship right under my nose in my own house. I couldn't believe either one of them would do it to me. Not only was Laura my wife, but Greg was someone I had known since childhood. How could both of them hurt me like that? The next day, I confronted the two of them just when they tried to deny it. I told them I had video footage of them kissing on the couch. The next thing they were saying was that it just happened, and they weren't trying to hurt anyone, especially me. I asked if they loved each other. Ironically, their lack of an answer is what gave me the answer I needed. They had some type of feelings for each other, and if that was how it was, then so be it. Who was I to stand in the way of true love? After learning the truth, I said screw it and moved out to my parents. Then I went on to social media and blasted them over social media. The fallout started right away. My in-laws turned against Laura, and even Greg's family shamed him. Our mutual friends took sides, and most of them chose mine, which proved that they were better friends than Greg could ever be to me. Naturally, my own family took my side, so I had their support from the start. The next few months were a whirlwind. I had to look at getting a new place of my own, going through with the divorce, and just moving on. Greg and Laura stayed in the apartment for a while, but Greg was failing to pay his half of the rent. Eventually, it led to the two of them being evicted. Since the two of them had been shunned by family and friends basically, it was difficult for them to find any support. The two of them ended up getting evicted, and from there they scrambled to find a place to live. It shouldn't be surprising that the two of them ended up breaking up sometime after this. I didn't care because neither of them were very important people in my life anymore. One of the worst things about this was losing not only my wife, but also my best friend. It seemed fitting that the two were also losing others in their life because of their actions. There wasn't one part of me that regretted blasting the truth of what they did all over Facebook. Let them feel a little of what I felt. I had never been a person who was big on revenge, but when it came down to it, I felt like I had to do it for the healing process. Would I do it again? Yes, I would, because it helped me take another step toward being able to move on. At this point in my life, I am dating again. My current girlfriend and I have been together for a few months. I can't say I have any idea where it is going to go, but I am hopeful that it is going to turn into something long-term. All I know is that I am going to take it slow. This is also something my girlfriend is fine with, thankfully. It helps a lot that she supports me in this. My ex-wife and ex-best friend aren't two people I think about anymore. Their lives haven't been easy since they decided to have an affair, but that is what you get. I can safely say that I am living my best life right now, and will continue to do so now that I have those two toxic people out of my life. Today's second story. In this story, OP met his wife at work, quickly fell in love, and married her within a year. She later started attending college while working, leading to a strained relationship. Suspicious of her behavior, he discovered she was having an affair with her boss. After confronting her, he exposed the affair to HR, leading to her boss's firing, their divorce, and her losing everything. Now let's get into the story. When my wife and I met, we worked in the same office building. I saw her for the first time when there was a fire in one of the break rooms in the building. I saw her standing outside while we waited for the fire department and walked over to her to flirt with her. I thought she was cute and funny, so I asked her out. We went out together and had an incredible night. By the end of the evening, I was envisioning a life with her. For the first time in my life, I could feel myself really falling in love with someone. We got married about a year after meeting for the first time. I was working in sales when we first met, and she was a secretary. Neither of us went to college, and both of us had always dreamed of going if we ever had the funds to. After working for several years at my job, I realized I didn't need to go to college. I was doing very well on my own, and I was climbing the ladder at work. My wife still wanted to go so she could be a teacher and leave her dead-end job. One day, she came home from work and told me about a new program that her office was offering where they would cover the cost of tuition for employees to study certain things. I assumed it was a continued education program for people who have already been I thought it was very strange because I had to go to college to study. I didn't think class schedules would just change like that. I mentioned that, and she told me that one of the professors had a family emergency and wasn't going to be able to teach at their regular time, so she had to switch to another class. It still didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I didn't have much of a reason to question her story. As far as I was aware, she never lied to me before in the past, so I trusted her. So on Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, I hardly saw my wife. I would say goodbye to her in the mornings, and I would see her again around 9 or 10 in the evening. When she wasn't at work or school, she was at home studying and trying to keep up with her homework. I could see that it was wearing on her. She and I stopped being intimate altogether. She was too stressed out from everything going on to even think about it. I tried to tell myself that it was all for the better, but it was frustrating. When she was home, I tried to make things as easy for her as possible. I coached for her. I made sure the house was tidy, and I offered to help her with studying and homework to make it a little less intensive. It was a Tuesday night, and I was expecting her to be home after work, but she didn't show up. I waited for a little while, just thinking that she was being held up at work and would walk in the door at any minute. But after about an hour of not showing up, I started to worry. I called her several times, and she didn't answer. After about 2.5 hours, she walked in the door like nothing was going on. She didn't understand why I was upset. She swore that she told me she was attending a study session with some other students, but she didn't. We got into an argument about it because she was refusing to believe she did something wrong. We eventually dropped it, and I was just thankful she was all right. Over the next couple of weeks, she attended the same study group that she mentioned that evening. I would be lying if I said that I wasn't annoyed that she was attending it. I had very little time to spend with her, and Tuesday nights were one of the only nights during the week I got to see her. I understood that she wanted to do well in her classes, but it felt very inconsiderate that she was sacrificing the little time we had together to join a study group that she didn't even need. When I would ask her about the group, she was very vague about the details she shared. She didn't even tell me what they were studying for. Around the same time, she was being very secretive with her phone, and it always seemed like she had something to hide. I was starting to get suspicious about what this study group really was. Something in my gut was telling me that she was lying about it and was trying to account for tying away from me. I asked her about who she was texting one day, and she told me that it was just the group chat for her study group. I suggested she invite them over for dinner one evening, but she quickly shut that down. She told me that they weren't really friends, just study partners. After a couple more weeks of the same things happening, I needed to get some confirmation that she was lying. Being honest, she came home one day and passed out in bed rather quickly. I grabbed her phone and looked through it just to find some kind of proof that the study group really existed. She specifically mentioned a group chat, but I didn't see any indication that there was one. I saw a few miscellaneous conversations to see what was going on. My wife wasn't at her desk, but I could see that her boss was in his office with the lights on. I approached it and listened, hearing some moans and grunting on the other side. It was safe to assume it was my wife with him in there. I didn't interrupt them. Instead, I logged into my wife's work computer and looked through the Slack messages between her and her boss. They were careful enough not to mention anything over text messages on her phone, but they lacked the forethought with their Slack channel. There were dozens of messages where he asked my wife what color her underwear was, asking her to take them off in the bathroom and bring them to him, and so much more. While they were in his office having intimate, I took screenshots of the messages and sent them to myself. I waited at her desk for them to come out of the room, They were both surprised to see me. My wife tried to make it seem like nothing was happening. I immediately told her that I wasn't an idiot and I knew that there was something going on, but I had no idea it was her boss. He tried to chime in and tell me that there was no point in overreacting about the situation, but that didn't make me want to punch him any less. My wife just asked me to leave the building with her so she could explain everything to me. I knew that there was no viable explanation for her cheating on me, so I didn't want to hear it. I left without her, but unfortunately, we lived in the same house, so it was difficult for me to avoid her. She cornered me in the kitchen and started explaining it all to me. She had known her boss for a very long time, long before she even met me. He knew how badly she wanted to get out of that job and start a career for herself. When they first met, they had a little bit of a fling in the office, but nothing came of it. He ended up getting married and, aside from a few drunken kisses over the years, nothing ever escalated. He and his wife divorced recently, and he started coming on to her more. At first, my wife shut it down and told him that she was married, but then he told her that he would help her with college tuition if she agreed to keep everything quiet. There was a program at their office for continuing education, but my wife wasn't technically qualified for it. Her boss pulled some strings for her and got her approved. In return, she slept with him. Looking back, he definitely shouldn't have offered that to her. He knew it would have been just tempting enough to get her to do what he wanted. The relationship was coerced from the start, but my wife was still married to me, and she still could have said no. She didn't need to go to college. She wanted to go, and she chose to cheat on me and sleep with her boss to do it. I told her that I couldn't see a way to look past it, and I was going to be looking for a divorce attorney. I grabbed some things, and I left to go stay in a hotel while I figured everything out. I was angry at my wife and her boss for everything they did, and I wanted to get back at them for it. I felt bad being so angry, but she had lied to me for a long time and it was wrong. I didn't even know that she had been with her boss before all that happened. She ain't proven to be untrustworthy. I found the Slack messages between my wife and her boss and drafted an email to send to their HR department. I explained everything that my wife told me, and I sent them a copy of the messages. I got a response the following day thanking me for sending the message and promising to launch an investigation. In the middle of the divorce proceedings with my wife, I found out that her boss was fired. My wife still had her job, and I think that was because the HR department was nervous about firing her because her boss was so persistent about sleeping with her. They were probably worried it could be some kind of retaliation against her. However, she did lose the funding for the tuition that she needed to attend college. She was forced to drop out, so in the end, I ended up divorcing my wife, and she lost everything. She didn't even get to continue going to school after the divorce. Her boss was fired, and the story actually ended up in the local newspaper. When you search his name, the termination is one of the first things that pops up. I know he's going to have a difficult time finding another job now,